The poet Carl Sandburg said it best. Nothing happens unless first a dream. All men dream. Some dream big, others small. Some see dreams as challenge, others as escape. And then there are those who see dreams as the very essence of our being. Martin Luther King was such an individual, a leader who dared to dream.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream today.
When Dr. King delivered those moving words in 1963, the nation's social conscience was aroused. That famous speech stands today as a moment frozen by history. A moment that galvanized the need to reverse the glaring inequities of our society. Service Employees member Arlene Neal remembers the emotions that were tugging at the hearts of millions.
I know that as I stood there and he did his I have a dream part, the tears started rolling down my face, and a little ashamedly I would sneak up to wipe away a tear. But then when I looked around me, here were all these other people standing there with the tears rolling down their cheeks. So we just stood there and cried and shouted.
Joe Beavers of the Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees Union also recognized the significance of the moment.
I think that that speech aroused the thinking in all of America, be they black or white. The I Have a Dream speech, I think, is the spark that ignited the change from segregation to integration.
The dream of Martin Luther King was a dream for all people, men and women, black and white. It was a dream for justice and equality, a dream for a better life, a dream for dignity in the workplace and in the whole of society.
This unity of purpose is not an historical coincidence.
When Dr. King outlined his dream to the AFL-CIO convention in 1961, the message rang familiar to many in his audience of labor.
Our needs are identical with labor's needs. That is why the labor hater and labor baiter is virtually always a twin-headed creature, spewing anti-Negro epithets from one mouth and anti-labor propaganda from the other mouth.
In so many ways, the goals espoused by Dr. King were parallel to the historic hopes and dreams of the American labor movement. Al Billick, director of the AFL-CIO's Public Employee Department, experienced the coming together of the civil rights movement and organized labor.
By joining together in a consolidated movement, we were able to establish that a working man and woman is a true dignified human being and one that has to be noticed and appreciated and recognized. The black movement did the same thing for blacks. And so we as trade unionists recognized very quickly that when blacks were making demands for equality, equal rights with others, that they in effect were expressing the same sentiment that had motivated trade unionists when they organized.
The history of the labor movement has been a history of struggle. every step of the way, unions have had to fight for recognition, fight for the rights of workers. That same sense of struggle also characterized the campaign for civil rights. Martin Luther King recognized that the campaign to overturn centuries of injustice could wait no longer. It was time for action. But generation-old prejudices die hard. The challenge was to get the moral attention of a nation, and unity was essential to a successful challenge of the status quo.
I saw people in churches, white and black, beginning to come together. I saw people in trade unions, white and black, begin to come together. I saw people in fraternal organizations, white and black, begin to come together and to begin eliminating many of the segregated and discriminatory practices that were practiced by all America in the 50s and early 60s.
Martin Luther King often spoke of the unique bond between the civil rights movement and the labor movement. And that bond endured and grew, even in the face of violent obstacles. To workers, Homestead, Ludlow, Flint, Michigan, and the Steel Workers Memorial Day Massacre were confrontations that saw Union solidarity strengthen in the face of violence. In the 1960s, violence surfaced again, and this time the target was the civil rights movement. Dr. King often found himself at the forefront of union activities. His work in New York with Local 1199 RWDSU provides the perfect example of his deep-rooted commitment to American workers.
Somewhere in life, people of justice and goodwill come to see the dignity of labor. And somewhere they come to see that if that person working in the hospital, even if he happens to be a janitor in the hospital, is in the final analysis as significant as the physician, because if he doesn't do his job, germs can develop which can be as injurious to the patient as anybody else.
In 1964, Martin Luther King went to the aid of the chemical workers who were engaged in a struggle with hostile management at a Scripto plant in Georgia. His presence and eloquence helped turn the tide. In the end, skilled and semi-skilled workers joined hands. Management relented. Union membership skyrocketed.
We can get much more through an organized effort than we can get through individual effort. Every Negro and every white person up to Scripto ought to be supporting the labor union. It's no accident Scripto is fighting not to deduct the wage dues from the salaries of the individual. It's no accident because they don't want a labor union up there, because they know they've got to treat you right.
History is filled with cruel twists. Success is all too often tinged with tragedy. And sometimes the price of victory involves the ultimate sacrifice. The ongoing quest for worker rights and human dignity brought Martin Luther King to Memphis in 1968 during a 9-week-old sanitation strike. When he arrived, conditions were deteriorating. The strike had taken its toll. Garbage lay strewn in the streets. The faces of the city's sanitation workers told a painful story. The story of AFL-CIO members who had been forced to fight for their rights. Martin Luther King came to try and help secure those rights. Once again, he spoke of the parallel between civil rights and labor.
But let me say to you tonight that whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. You are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
And like the Old Testament prophets he had so often recounted from the pulpit, there was a somber sense of what lay ahead.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Martin Luther King died in Memphis. He died fighting for the rights of workers, for the cause of labor. He brought his dream to Memphis and left a shocked and mourning nation with a legacy of hope. While hearts grieved, souls remained firm and committed. For a dream cannot be dented by an assassin's bullet. Martin Luther King dared to dream. By daring, he crossed paths that others refused to tread. He opened doors that had been closed for generations. He brought dignity and hope to millions trapped by injustice. And he left us a dream for a better society, a dream that remains unfulfilled. A dream that is now the focus of a national celebration, a celebration of his dream, a dream to which we owe reality.